For this project, we'll be animating a simple bouncing ball. We are going to start basic and then we're going to build on it. So let's start. I'm just going to place a sphere down in our scene. Let's scale it over in the channel box to 0.5 and let's rename it to ball. We're also going to set down a plane and let's scale that up. All right. Now, there is one thing that I want to point out. The ball doesn't have respect to the boundaries of other objects. We can easily just push our ball down through the plane without any resistance. I'm pointing this out because it's important to understand that we, as the animator, have to be the one to precisely place everything. The software does not set the boundaries. It does not simulate weight or obstacles. It's up to us to create the relationship between the ball and the ground and set the boundary ourselves. We are responsible for every frame. Now, let's set down a cube and move this over. I'm going to hold down D and V and click in the middle with my middle mouse and snap the pivot in the down to a bottom vertex. Let me make sure that it's the bottom vertex of the cube. There we go. Now I'm going to scale this up to right about there. Okay, let's move it over. All right, so now we have a ledge for our ball to drop off of. Let's turn off the grid because we already have a floor down here. So turn that off. And let's turn on anti-aliasing right here so that everything looks nice and smooth. So when we're animating, we have let me move this down. We have the timeline down below. Within the timeline, we have some options. We have all of our frames, which are all empty because we have not keyed or animated anything yet. We have a play button, as well as some buttons for skipping back and forth. We can choose our frames per second right here, also called FPS, which is a drop down where you can change the frame rate. We'll be animating in 24 frames per second because pretty much every film that you have ever watched is 24 frames per second, so we will mimic that. When we scrub through the timeline, nothing is happening, so let's animate this a little bit. Let's take the ball and put it on the ledge right over here. So I'm going to lift that up, push it back, make sure it's centered a bit. For this first step, I don't want you to worry about rotation. Even though a rolling ball would typically roll and rotate, we're totally going to ignore this rotation. In fact, if the wireframe is kind of distracting, let's go to Show, down to Viewport, and turn off Selection Highlighting. All right, so now you don't see the wireframe. Now we can just focus on the position of the ball and not on rotation. So with the ball up here, we want to set our first keyframe. We can do that in several ways. Most animators use the shortcut S on their keyboard. So let's select frame 1 and hit S. If you look over in the channel box over here, we can see that all 10 attributes of the ball have been keyed. In our case, we're just going to be working with the translation right now. So let's undo this like so. And now if I just want to key the translations, I can hit Shift W on my keyboard. And as you can see, that keyed only the 3 translations. All right, so now we have our first key. If you look down on the timeline, we have this red tick right here. That means that we have an object that has been keyed on frame 1. All right, let's move to a frame further down to the timeline. Let's move to frame 10. And let's move this ball to be on the ground. To right about there. Move it a little distance out. So now it's on the floor and let's key it. So that's going to be Shift W and that will have keyed our new position on frame 10. Now we want it to bounce. So let's move down another 10 frames to frame 20. And let's move the ball further out. And let's move it up and key it. Shift W. Now it's up in the air because it has hit the ground and it's bouncing back up, but now we want it to follow an arc and hit the ground again. So let's move the ball further out. Oops. Let's make sure that we're in a different frame. Let's move to frame 30. Now let's move the ball out and back down towards the ground plane, like so. And let's frame it or key it. Shift W. So we've keyed it again. You can see we now have 4 frames that have been keyed. Let's see our animation so far. We can just scrub through it on the timeline, or we can hit the play button over here. Now you'll notice that it's moving freakishly fast. That's because the playback speed has not been set to real time. So let's right click on the timeline, go to playback speed and set it to real time. Now let's scrub back and play it again. You can see we now have real time speed. Okay. Now it doesn't look super compelling right now, but we are going to refine this and make it look a lot better. We're just taking our time right now. So we have the animation done. I'm really quickly going to turn on ambient occlusion right up here so that we can see some shadows. There we go. So now you see the shadow as the objects come into contact, and it just makes it look a lot better. So now we can see we have this ball that rolls and bounces. But the first thing you're going to notice is that it just kind of starts immediately if I push play. There's no pause at the beginning. It immediately rolls down and bounces. Scrub back to right here. We never want to start animating anything from the first frame as a general animation rule. So we want to move all the animation over 6 frames. Let's hold shift, click, and drag on the timeline so that all of our frames are selected. Now that you see that they're all selected, we want to grab from the middle and move our frames down 6 frames. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, now when we play our animation, let me bring this back. When we play our animation, you're going to see now that it doesn't immediately start. There's a little bit of a pause at the beginning, which is exactly what we wanted. So now our ball is sitting on the ledge. It starts to fall. It hits the ground. It bounces, and it comes to a stop. This is a good basic animation to begin with. And the next part, we're going to refine this animation and learn more about what it takes to make something believable as far as animation is concerned.